The crunch of my ribs was louder than my scream. My brother stood over me, fists still trembling, while my mom rushed in, not to help me, but to whisper in my ear, "Stay quiet. He has a future." My body was breaking, but so was my silence. Because when my doctor saw the bruises, she didn't blink. She picked up the phone, and everything changed. If you've ever been silenced for someone else's mistakes, if you've ever been told to stay quiet while your pain was ignored, then you're going to feel this one deep in your chest. Hit that like button, subscribe, and buckle up, because this isn't just a story about broken bones. It's a story about breaking cycles, and watching justice finally land where it belongs. My name is Jenny, and I've lived my whole life in the shadow of my brother's future. Ryan, the golden child, the star athlete, the one everyone bragged about at family dinners. If he skipped school, the excuse was stress. If he smashed a plate against the wall, it was just hormones. And if he barked cruel words at me, Mom would look straight at me and whisper, "Don't provoke him, Jenny. He has so much on his shoulders." But what about my shoulders? What about the years I spent hunched under the weight of being the scapegoat, the forgotten daughter, the one expected to keep the peace no matter what? I grew up learning that silence was safer than truth. But silence never protected me, it only protected Ryan. The night he broke my ribs started over something so small, so stupid, it almost feels unreal to say it out loud. A phone charger. My phone charger. I had been in my room studying, the dull hum of my desk lamp keeping me company, when Ryan barged in like he owned the place. He didn't knock. He never knocked. He yanked the charger from the wall, smirking as the blue light on my phone dimmed. "Thanks, loser," he said, already walking toward the door. "Ryan, put it back." "That's mine," I said, my voice sharper than usual. He froze, then turned with a look I knew too well, that dangerous flicker in his eyes. The kind of look that meant he wanted a reaction, that he enjoyed the power he had over me. "Oh, you think you deserve something for yourself?" His laugh was sharp, hollow. "Go buy your own." "Oh wait, you're too broke, aren't you?" I should have swallowed it. That's what I usually did. Bite my tongue. Bury my anger. Wait until it was over. But that night, something inside me snapped. "Ryan, put it back. I'm not asking again." The words hung between us like a live wire. And then he moved. It happened fast, but slow enough for me to remember every detail. The way his smile vanished, replaced with that hard, cold expression. The way his fists clenched, knuckles whitening. The way my stomach dropped, even before the first hit landed. He lunged. His fist slammed into my side. Once. Twice. I gasped, clutching my ribs, trying to shield myself. But he was relentless. A kick followed, then another blow. And then, crack. I will never forget that sound. A sharp, sickening pop, louder than my own scream. My chest caved with pain, and breathing suddenly became a war. Every inhale felt like knives tearing through me. I couldn't even cry out properly, just a rasp, a choked whimper as my vision blurred. That's when Mom rushed in. For one split second, relief bloomed inside me. Maybe, just maybe, this would finally be the moment she saw me. Protected me. But no. She knelt beside me, her face pale, her hands trembling, but not with concern. With fear. Not fear for me. Fear for Ryan. She gripped my hand, leaned close, and whispered so quietly only I could hear. "Stay quiet. He has a future." Her son had just broken me, and all she cared about was his college scholarship, his football career, his perfect record. In her eyes, I wasn't her daughter anymore. I was a problem that needed to disappear. The hours after that blurred together. Mom bundled me into the car, muttering excuses under her breath. "You tripped. You fell down the stairs. Just stick to the story, Jenny." Every bump in the road sent waves of agony through my chest. My hands clutched my side, and I could barely breathe without gasping. By the time we reached the hospital, I was half conscious. The fluorescent lights burned my eyes, and the antiseptic smell stung my nose. Mom did the talking at first. She rattled off her prepared lie: she fell, clumsy girl, she always trips. But the nurse wasn't buying it. I saw the way her eyebrows arched, the way her gaze lingered on the purple bruises blooming across my torso as she gently helped me onto the bed. And then the doctor walked in. A woman in her 40s, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun, eyes sharp and piercing. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. She examined me carefully, every bruise, every mark. She didn't ask if I had fallen. She didn't pretend to believe the pathetic story Mom stammered. She looked straight at me, her voice steady, her eyes locked onto mine. "Jenny," she said softly, "you're safe now." And before my mother could spin another excuse, before I could even process what was happening, the doctor picked up the phone. Her voice was calm, professional, unwavering. "This is Dr. Morgan. I need law enforcement and child protective services at County General immediately." And that, right there, was the moment everything shifted. For the first time in my life, someone chose me. Someone believed me. Someone refused to let Ryan's future matter more than my broken ribs, my broken body, my broken silence. As I lay there, chest screaming with every shallow breath, one thought burned through the haze of pain. Ryan thought he broke me that night. But what he really broke was the silence that had always protected him. The sterile smell of disinfectant clung to the air, sharp and unrelenting, like the moment itself. My body ached with every small movement, my ribs screaming in protest when I tried to adjust on the hospital bed. Mom stood stiffly in the corner, her arms crossed, her eyes darting toward the door every time footsteps echoed in the hall. She wasn't worried about me. She was worried about who might walk in. The doctor, Dr. Morgan, hadn't left my side since making the call. She hovered like a guardian, her expression calm but firm. I could see it in her eyes, she had seen this before. Too many times. "Jenny," she said softly, her hand brushing against my arm in reassurance, "you don't need to say anything you're not ready to. But if you want to talk, I'm here." Before I could respond, the door opened. 2 uniformed police officers stepped inside. Their presence filled the small room instantly, and Mom nearly jumped out of her skin. "This isn't necessary," she started quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "My daughter is fine. She just had a little accident, and..." One of the officers raised his hand, silencing her mid-sentence. His voice was steady, professional. "Ma'am, we'll need to hear directly from your daughter." The words hit like sunlight cracking through clouds. For once, the spotlight wasn't on Ryan. It was on me. My chest tightened, not just from the broken ribs, but from the weight of years of silence. I looked down at my bruised hands, trembling slightly. Mom's eyes bored into me, warning, pleading, commanding, all at once. "Jenny," she said sharply, her voice suddenly edged with steel. "Tell them what happened. Tell them you fell." Dr. Morgan didn't flinch. She simply crossed her arms, standing solidly between me and Mom, her body language screaming one thing: say it. Say your truth. I swallowed hard. My voice cracked, but the words came anyway. "I didn't fall," I whispered. The room went still. The officer leaned closer, his notebook ready. "Go on, Jenny." And so, for the first time in my life, I told the truth. About the phone charger. About the fists. About the kick that cracked my ribs like twigs underfoot. About the way Ryan had been hurting me for years, shoves into walls, slaps when no one was looking, words like knives thrown at me when Mom wasn't around. My chest burned, my throat tightened, but with every word I spoke, I felt something inside me loosen, like chains finally falling away. Mom tried to interrupt, her voice rising in panic. "She's exaggerating. She's emotional. Ryan would never." The second officer cut her off. "Ma'am, please. We're listening to your daughter." For once, they chose me. When I finished, the room was silent except for the scratch of the officer's pen across his notepad. Then he nodded. "Thank you, Jenny. You've been very brave." Brave. No one had ever called me that before. Mom, on the other hand, looked like she had been slapped. Her face paled, her mouth opening and closing with no sound. Finally, she hissed, "Do you have any idea what you've done? You just ruined your brother's life." The words stung, but only for a moment. Then, almost unexpectedly, I felt relief. Because for once, Ryan's life wasn't my responsibility. That night, Ryan was arrested. The sound of the cuffs clicking shut around his wrists still echoes in my memory. He looked stunned, as if the world had betrayed him. As if accountability was a foreign concept. He twisted, glaring at me as they led him out of the hospital room. "You'll pay for this, Jenny," he spat, his voice filled with venom. But I didn't shrink this time. I sat up straighter, pain slicing through my ribs, and stared right back. For the first time in years, I didn't look away. After they took him, Mom collapsed into the chair beside me, her hands clutching her head. "You don't understand," she whispered frantically. "Ryan had everything lined up, a scholarship, scouts watching him. He was our ticket out, Jenny. And you just..." I cut her off, my voice hoarse but steady. "He broke me, Mom. And you let him." Her face crumpled, but not from guilt. From anger. From disappointment. She didn't see a daughter lying in a hospital bed. She saw the person who had ruined her fantasy of a perfect son. It hurt, but it also clarified everything. For years, I thought if I just stayed quiet long enough, she'd love me the same way she loved him. But love that depends on silence isn't love at all. The next days were a blur of questions, paperwork, and investigations. Child Protective Services got involved. Every bruise was photographed, every detail documented. At night, lying in the hospital bed, I listened to the hum of the machines and thought about the chain reaction that had begun. Ryan was finally facing consequences. Mom was being forced to answer questions she couldn't lie her way out of. And me? I was finally being heard. I remember one quiet moment. Dr. Morgan came back into my room after a long day of checkups. She sat down in the chair beside me, her eyes kind but tired. "You did the right thing," she said softly. Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. "But Mom hates me now. She'll never forgive me." Dr. Morgan shook her head. "Jenny, forgiveness isn't what you need from her. What you need is freedom. And you just gave yourself the chance to have it." Her words sank deep into me, soothing a wound far older than the broken ribs. For the first time, I realized, maybe this wasn't just about survival anymore. Maybe this was about reclaiming my life. The days following Ryan's arrest blurred into one long stretch of paperwork, phone calls, and questions. Detectives came to the hospital, asking me to recount everything again and again. At first, I hated reliving it, the fists, the crack of my ribs, Mom whispering to protect him. But each time I told it, the weight grew lighter. Like I was finally unloading years of secrets, brick by brick. Ryan was charged with aggravated assault. They didn't play it down, didn't call it a family misunderstanding or a scuffle between siblings. They called it what it was, violence. And for once, the law didn't care about his scholarship offers or his athletic record. Mom, however, refused to accept it. At the bail hearing, she sat in the front row, clutching her purse like a lifeline, eyes wide with panic. When Ryan was brought in, shackled at the wrists, she gasped like he was the victim. The judge read the charges, his voice even and steady, but Mom couldn't keep quiet. "Your Honor, please, he's a good boy. This is all blown out of proportion. My daughter, she's exaggerating. She always has." Her words sliced through me. Even in front of a judge, even with me sitting there bruised and broken, she was still choosing him. Ryan smirked at me from across the room, that same arrogant grin he wore every time he got away with hurting me. But this time, he wasn't walking out free. The judge set bail high, higher than Mom could ever afford. Ryan's smirk faltered when the gavel came down. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. When I was discharged from the hospital, CPS placed me with my aunt, Mom's older sister. I hadn't seen Aunt Claire much growing up. Mom always said she was too judgmental, which, I now realized, probably just meant she saw through the lies. Claire's home was warm, safe, and quiet. The kind of place where I could actually exhale without bracing for footsteps outside my door. She wrapped me in a hug the first night, whispering, "You deserved better, Jenny. You'll have it now." Those words became my anchor as the court date approached. The trial itself was brutal. Ryan's lawyer painted him as a stressed-out student athlete with the world's weight on his shoulders. He called it a moment of poor judgment, a family squabble blown out of proportion. Mom sat behind him every day, nodding along, her expression full of desperate devotion. She wouldn't even look at me. When it was my turn to testify, my knees shook as I walked to the stand. The courtroom was too big, too bright, every eye on me. But then I remembered Dr. Morgan's words, "What you need isn't forgiveness. It's freedom." I swore to tell the truth, and for once, I did. I told the jury about the charger. The punches. The kick that shattered my ribs. The years of smaller violences that built to that night. I didn't soften the details. I didn't downplay my pain. I let my voice tremble, let my tears fall, but I never looked away from the jurors' eyes. Ryan's attorney tried to rattle me on cross-examination. "Jenny, isn't it true you and your brother have normal sibling fights? Isn't it possible this was just horseplay that went too far?" Horseplay. My ribs still ached when I breathed too deep. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "Does horseplay leave you with broken bones? Does horseplay make your mother beg you to lie so her son doesn't lose his scholarship?" The room went quiet. Even the lawyer didn't seem to have a comeback. When I stepped down from the stand, I caught Ryan's glare. For the first time, there was no arrogance behind it, just raw fury. He knew the tide was turning, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Mom's eyes, though, were worse. They weren't filled with pride or even anger. They were filled with betrayal. Not because her son had hurt me, but because I had finally refused to stay silent. It was in that moment that something inside me hardened. I realized this wasn't just about me versus Ryan. It was me versus the years of silence, denial, and favoritism that had kept him untouchable. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was justice. The prosecution's final argument was simple, almost poetic. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not about a scholarship. It is not about a future career in sports. It is about a young woman who had her body broken by the very person who should have been her protector. The evidence is clear. The injuries are undeniable. The truth has been spoken. Now it is your duty to deliver justice." As the jury left to deliberate, my heart pounded so hard I thought my ribs might crack all over again. Mom reached across the aisle, trying one last time. "Jenny, please," she hissed, her nails digging into my sleeve. "Change your story. Tell them it was an accident. You'll ruin him otherwise." I pulled my arm back, the motion sharper than I intended, pain flaring in my chest. "No, Mom," I said quietly, firmly. "He ruined himself." Her face collapsed in on itself, but I didn't care. For once, her disappointment wasn't my prison. When the jury filed back an hours later, the room was silent enough to hear every shuffle, every breath. My palms were sweaty, my throat dry. The foreman stood. "We, the jury, find the defendant." The words that followed would change everything. The air in the courtroom was so thick it felt like trying to breathe through water. Every eye was locked on the foreman as he unfolded the slip of paper, his hand steady, his face unreadable. My ribs ached, my palms were damp, and for a heartbeat I thought I might faint. Then the words came. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty." The gavel cracked down like thunder, final and unrelenting. For a second, I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Then the dam inside me broke. A sob escaped, not of sorrow, but of release. Years of silence, years of bruises, years of being told I didn't matter, and finally, the world believed me. Ryan froze. His mouth opened, shut, opened again, but nothing came out. The arrogance that had draped over him like armor was gone. All that remained was shock, pure, unfiltered disbelief. The bailiffs moved quickly, cuffing him once more, but this time there was no smirk. No glare. Just wide, panicked eyes as they led him away. And Mom? Her wail echoed through the courtroom, raw and broken. She clutched at the air, like she could drag Ryan back with her hands alone. No. He's just a boy. He had a future. Her voice cracked on the last word, the same word she'd used against me 100 times. Future. His future. Always his. I sat straighter, my ribs screaming but my heart steady. And what about mine, Mom? What about my future? Outside the courthouse, the world felt brighter, sharper. The air was cold against my skin, but it filled my lungs fully, painful, yes, but free. Aunt Claire wrapped her arm around me, her voice low. You did it, Jenny. You stood up. You broke the cycle. I nodded, tears slipping down my cheeks, but they weren't heavy anymore. They felt like cleansing rain after a long drought. Mom walked past us, her eyes red, her face a mask of grief and fury. She didn't say a word. Didn't even look at me. For her, I wasn't a daughter anymore, I was the executioner of her favorite child's future. And maybe that was true. But if his future depended on crushing me, then it deserved to end. That night, as I lay in my aunt's guest room, the quiet hummed in my ears. No slamming doors. No footsteps outside my room. No whisper in the dark telling me to stay quiet. For the first time I wasn't praying my own story. And though my ribs still throbbed, though bruises still marred my skin, I felt something I hadn't in years. Safe. Free. Alive. Ryan's sentencing came a month later. By then, the bruises had faded to pale yellow, but my ribs still ached when I twisted too sharply. The scars inside, though, the years of silence and dismissal, those would take longer to heal. The courtroom was quieter this time. No jury, just the judge, the lawyers, and us. Ryan shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands shackled. He looked smaller than I remembered, the swagger gone, his shoulders hunched like the walls of reality had finally closed in. The judge's words were firm, clipped, merciless. Ryan Miller, you are sentenced to 5 years in state prison, with no eligibility for early release. 5 years. The sound of the gavel sealing his fate rang through the room, sharp and final. Mom broke again, sobbing into her hands. Please, Your Honor, he's just a boy. He didn't mean it. But the judge didn't even look at her. He's not a boy. He's a man who made choices. Choices with consequences. Those words sank into me like sunlight. Choices. Consequences. The very things Ryan had been shielded from his whole life had finally found him. As Ryan was led away, he turned his head toward me, his eyes wild. This is your fault, Jenny, he spat, his voice cracking. I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. I met his glare with steady eyes and said quietly, no. This is yours. And for the first time, he had no comeback. Walking out of the courthouse, Aunt Claire squeezed my shoulder. How do you feel? She asked. I inhaled deeply. The cold air filled my chest, sharp but complete, and I let it out slowly. Lighter, I whispered. Because this wasn't just about Ryan's punishment. It was about me finally claiming my voice. For years, I'd been told to stay quiet. To protect his future at the cost of my own. But now, his silence was the one that mattered. And my voice, the one they tried to bury, had set me free. Life didn't turn perfect overnight. My relationship with Mom was fractured, maybe beyond repair. She still refused to look at me the same way, still clung to the idea of Ryan as her golden boy. But I'd stopped chasing her approval. Because I realized something important: love that requires your silence isn't love. It's control. And I was done being controlled. That night, lying in bed at Aunt Claire's house, I closed my eyes and listened to the quiet. No footsteps. No threats. No whispered demands to protect someone else's future. Just silence. A silence that belonged to me. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. Justice doesn't always roar into the room, it can come quietly, in the click of handcuffs, in the gavel's sharp crack, in the silence that follows after years of being told to shut up. For Jenny, the sweetest revenge wasn't Ryan's prison sentence. It wasn't even watching the golden boy stripped of his scholarship and future. It was reclaiming her own voice, the very thing they tried to bury under excuses, favoritism, and lies. Her story is the story of so many people who are told to stay quiet, who are made to believe their pain doesn't matter if it inconveniences someone else's dreams. But Jenny proved that truth doesn't go away when you silence it, it only grows louder. Mom's pleas couldn't erase what Ryan did. Her whispers of "he has a future" rang hollow against the bruises and broken ribs. Because in the end, his future wasn't hers to protect. And it wasn't Jenny's to sacrifice for. What Ryan lost was justice. What Jenny gained was freedom. And freedom is worth everything. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to smash that like button, it really helps the channel grow. And tell me in the comments, have you ever seen someone finally get the justice they deserved? I'd love to read your stories. Most importantly, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Because here on this channel, we don't just tell stories, we give voice to the silenced, and we celebrate when karma finally hits where it should. Stay strong, stay heard, and I'll see you in the next story.